Well, hello and welcome to another live edition of the Artist's Forge. We are so glad to be with you today and to have you be with us. If you are hanging out today with us in the interwebs, we would love it if you would say hi and let us know that you're here. While we wait for our friends to show up, let me introduce the wonderful co-hosts, Matt Stagliano, Becca Bjorky, and Bassam Sabah. Hello, friends.
Hi, I'm
Hello.
here.
I'm here. How is everybody today? I have a feeling today is going to be an interesting show.
Is
How is everybody?
there a planet in retrograde? Is something happening in space? Doesn't have to be anything. It could be just something, right? Something's happening in space. I'm going to blame whatever that is going on
It's
whatever's
here.
happening here. So,
It's Earth.
It's us.
Yeah, it's us in space on Earth.
you know,
Us. We are the planet with all the
Self-induced
problems.
misery.
I heard that NASA finally recorded what a black hole sounds like. Something that is like 25 million light years away or something ridiculous. And they were able to find the sound of a black hole. And it sounds like me in the morning. It's just kind of like groaning and grunting and crying. And I was just like, oh, the universe is like, we're all just space dust because we're all sound exactly the same. So,
That sound of the black hole, that was my soul. That's what that was. It's just out there going,
that's exactly what it sounded like. It's just like, oh, I've had enough of this. The
Yep.
gravity of my situation. I'm just going to drop puns in there wherever I can.
No, that was a good dad pun. That was good.
Thanks.
So Matt's in retrograde technically. Becca, how are you doing? My dog is apparently in the same boat as we are. Just so that we don't have this happening, Bassam, how are you? I'm going to handle the dogs and you can talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. How am I doing? Well, I spent my day sending checks and online payments to the government for taxes and payroll being myself, but just a lot of money going out today. It's ridiculous. Like thousands. Ooh, ugh. Yeah.
So I've
okay.
nailed that. If you don't make money, you don't have to pay
I know.
taxes
It's
on
still-
it.
You still get that feeling though. I never have problems with taxes because of that reason. The more, if you're paying taxes, hey, good for you.
Right, it's a good thing.
Right? But on the spot when you're doing it, it's like, ouch.
It hurts every time, man. And I submitted all my stuff for my taxes to my CPA, I don't know, a couple weeks back, and she was hitting me today with a couple of questions, and it's fine. I totally forgot that I did it, and that there will be some upcoming payments that I have to make.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's taxes, man. Hits you 4 times a year, 4 or 5 times a year, and it never feels good. You're never like, fuck yeah, taxes. Taxation is theft.
You know what? Okay, it's fine. If we had really fantastic social services, I would be down for taxes. I'd be like, cool. I don't never have to worry about going to the doctor. My kid, I don't ever got to worry about my kid's education. Like if we had really fantastic social services, I'd be like, cool, tax is fine. Like I can get down with that. We don't even have good roads. Like tell me what you're using my taxes for.
Oh.
You can't tell me.
Okay. It's all relative. It's all relative. Like when I go to the States, I say, wow, they have amazing roads here compared to here. It's like, yeah.
See, but
Hey,
you
the
guys
other
got
exciting
that
thing that happened
healthcare
in my
thing
life,
covered.
the other exciting thing that happened yesterday was having a discussion with a potential client who had a problem with the pricing, my pricing being, let's say, thousands of dollars per shoot. And he's a real estate agent, and he's trying to compare me to the photographers that he hires to do house pictures. He says, and I pay them $80, and they go to the place and they give me like 50 pictures, and I negotiate with them. And anyways, never, needless to say, will not be a customer, but $80.
I do a lot of that same type of work. I'm not $80. I'm $250.
No, I realize it's a different business model. It's a lot, it's hundreds, it's not thousands or whatever it is, right? still.
But I'm just saying, like, that's one, remarkably cheap, and two, I think it's pretty weird that he would equate his own pictures
Yeah.
to bring him business to
It comes
a
back
couch
to
in a
how
living
you
room.
value things. Yeah.
People are strange creatures. Speaking of that, you probably will be hearing my pug snore. Just fair warning, there's nothing that can be done. All right, so now David says, "You're so glowy, Becca."
Speaking of strange
Eventually, I'll
creatures,
figure out lighting. I mean, you'd think I'd understand lighting at this point in my life.
Dim. There's a dimmer somewhere. No.
Not in the StreamYard.
Oh.
It's a confused situation. So speaking of strange creatures, almost everybody I know right now is in some kind of emotional funk for some reason, and like it spans the whole spectrum from like socio-political stuff to work stuff all the way to like personal bullshit. And it seems like we're in, and I've been correlating a lot of these fluctuations that we're having with seasons. Like I remember at the beginning of winter, everybody was just kind of like, "Oh, I'm done." And then right at the beginning of the year, we were like, "It might not be that bad." And then now we're like, "It's so messy." And that's kind of a spring thing, right? Like there's all the growing pains, all of the change, all of the like the birth stuff that's like threatening and causing pain. So like all of the ways you know you need to grow are popping up and making you uncomfortable and forcing you to think about stuff you'd rather not even face. Like almost like, can we just hide in the dark again? But you can't because the sun's up now. So like I don't know anybody who's just perfectly content with where things are and nothing but excited. Everybody's kind of feeling the tension of right now. And I don't know how much that correlates seasonally. I'm sure that it must, us being like diurnal creatures with circadian rhythms and everything. But do you feel like you asked in the beginning, Matt, if something else is going on, is it enough just to say seasonal changes and the kind of natural rhythms are getting us? Or do you think that there's like a wider, I just lost the word, zeitgeist like happening? Like what is going on? If you're hanging out in the audience today, we want to say hi to you, so don't forget to say something. We want to hang out with you. But if you have any thoughts on the questions and the things that we're talking about, please post those. We want to be able to have these conversations with you. What's going on in the cultural zeitgeist, y'all, in our like collective mental emotional whatevers? Why are we all so broken right now?
I've been actually thinking about this for the past couple of days as I've been in my own funk for the past couple of months, right? And it kind of started at WPPI where I was having this conversation a lot, and you talk to people and everybody wants to put their best foot forward and, you know, make everything look like everything's great. But there was this undercurrent that business ain't so great in the creative arts these days. And that's not unheard of, given that there is a looming recession, that people are being a bit more conservative. We're entering a new political cycle, right? There's just a lot of weird stuff that's kind of happening. I know for me, the transition, I call it mud season between ski season and the summer, right? In that there's always this strange shutdown and reforming that I go through because you can't really do anything outside without it being a sloppy mess. And it's also people are coming off of the winter, looking forward to the end of school and starting to plan for the summer, right? So my bookings I know have been incredibly slow, and I've been forcing myself into creativity. I got into the studio yesterday with a couple of teenage girls that sounded terrible and their mom to do a shoot. And it was amazing. Wasn't getting paid for it, but it was good creative work. I'm trying to fill my time with distractions, podcasts, working on admin stuff, changing my desk, like anything that I can do to disrupt the patterns, right? I know as well for me, one of the things that goes on is if I don't choose to feel good, my default is going to be something other than that. Given my own weird head, that if I don't actively choose to say, you know what, I'm in kind of a funk, But I can turn that right around and choose to feel good. Give yourself a couple of deep breaths, a couple of blinks, and I can switch things up. But it feels like I'm doing that more and more lately. Nothing in my life is bad. I have zero problems on the world stage, but it just feels heavier right now. And I don't know what it is. So I think, I've been doing all the things that therapists and the internet memes say to do, right? Set the right boundaries, get rid of relationships that don't serve you, exercise more, eat better, hydrate, right? Brush your teeth, all the things that just do the small steps to make yourself feel better. I'm having faith that all those small steps are going to lead to something better long term, instead of obsessing and focusing on, well, shit, I've got this to do and this to do and no bookings and marketing and social media and oppress. I'm just really trying to say, yes, that exists. I can acknowledge it and stay in that shitty place, or I can focus on the little things that I can control and make me feel good and have faith that all of that together is going to lead to something better. That's kind of where I'm at. I know it was long and circuitous, but I figured I'd just kind of throw it all out there at once.
No, I feel like it makes a lot of sense, especially when you said, usually you can choose to be happy, but it seems like you're having to choose it more and more often again, which it just makes the entire process more taxing, right? Like it's not as easy to keep and keep and keep. Which reminds me of a lot of the neurodivergent friends I have who, when they explain like the process of masking and having to keep that mask up and, like that process, that it's almost second nature when they've been doing it for a long time, but it still is mentally and physically and emotionally draining your resources. And I wish I had good insights. For that. But I will say, I made a quick complaint post on Facebook not that long ago, basically just saying I feel like my brain is done. Like I'm doing things, and at the end of the day, I know that I have done stuff, but I don't know where the time went. I don't even know what I did always. Like it's 1:14 and I feel like it was just 9:45 in the morning. It's happening so fast. I don't know where it's all going. And so Pauline Goyard said, maybe it's time to learn how to be bored again. And I was like, that's a really, really good point. It's been a long time since I've had nothing to do and then just did it for any period of time. So I really like the idea of thinking about that. And I know I have given myself a schedule that I can't deviate from for a while for a reason. But I am looking at the end of that and going, maybe once that stuff is done, I can just disconnect entirely and see what that does.
I just want to follow up one quick thing since she's not here. I was talking to Kat this morning, and we were having a very similar discussion about kind of stuff that's going on. And one thing that I've noticed that a lot of successful people, including Kat, are doing is just mildly shifting their focus to something else that gives them a lot of energy. I know for me, it's podcasts. I know for Kat, it's course creation and launching products and all of that sort of stuff. And that momentum carries over for me when I do something creative and I'm able to build it, even though it's not bringing me income. It makes me feel better and kind of lifts me up. Oh yeah, I still got it. So I just have to stick through this a little bit longer. And it's not dissimilar. And Dennis just said something about the pandemic. It's not dissimilar to how I felt at the beginning of that. And that wound up being my most profitable year. So it's just a matter of shifting that perspective a little bit for me and, shifting the focus and making sure that I'm focusing on things that make me feel good rather than being like, well, yep, that's one fewer zero in the bank account,
For sure. So I want to grab, before Bassam and Becca kind of share where they're at, I want to grab a few comments from our friends in Facebook land. David saying a lot of his personal anxiety is political in nature, especially around of course, if anybody's paying attention to the news, all of the legislation and everything else that is being proposed is incredibly uncomfortable and disheartening, especially after such long fights, even to get where we're at right now. I know the book community, we just finished the trans rights readathon, so everybody was reading to raise money for the trans community and multiple different places, just to try to do whatever we could on behalf of the community as all of this legislation is coming up. And it is incredibly, I mean, like the effect of the social political climate on how we feel daily can't be underestimated. Like it's a real legit difficult thing to deal with. But on a positive note, second interview, congratulations, you're gonna do it. Dennis, as you mentioned earlier, Matt, saying during the pandemic, I found letting myself be bored for a few hours on Sunday became very refreshing. It's almost meditative. I mean, it's a really good chance to just decompress your brain. Bobby saying had a personal bad anniversary date a few days ago, so I was in a mood, but that notwithstanding, I've kind of felt like people are starting to get excited and feeling positive about coming out of the winter doldrums. Frankly, all the positivity ticked me up, but I'm fine-ish now. I think we all have probably experienced that at some point where you have all the happy people and you're just like, whatever. Why are you so happy? So I can definitely understand where that comes from. Becca, Bassam, what about you two? How are you feeling during the season? Are you in any way the same, or do you feel like you're maybe outside this whole thing?
No, same in a way. Although I do believe that seasonal changes affect some people or most people, it's in my case they don't. For me, it's seasonal. I'm totally oblivious to the season, to the weather, to this. It doesn't really come into play, and I'm sure a lot of people are like me. But this conversation we're having, it seems that we can have it almost any time of year, right? It's not just seasonal, right? We own businesses. We're trying to do things. We're trying to make a life. We have families. We have kids. And I think there's so much happening around us that we never get a break. And like Matt was saying, you try to get away from something, then you hit something else, then you make an effort to get away from it, then you hit something else, and it just seems to be a constant barrage of what's happening around. And in my case, where I have to watch myself lately, because it's not that I'm getting out of control, but I'm starting to wonder, hey, like, relax. It's not, deal with it. This political climate, right? Coming to what David said, I'm just getting a bit of anger, a little frustration. I'm fed up of everything that's going on. It's like no matter where you turn, and the polarization and the blaming and the shaming and the bashing, and it just never stops. And that for me is for some reason weighing very heavily on me, right? It's under my control. I can do something about it, right? I could just ignore it. But it's just everywhere you turn. Right? You can't look at anything without somebody with an opinion that just pisses me off, right? And sorry, I kind of exaggerating a bit, but that's how I feel. And that's on top of just the regular day-to-day business things and family things that we got to deal with, which are happening and changing. And, that's, I don't think it's seasonal. I think we live in a crazy world nowadays compared to whatever number of years you want to go back. And maybe everybody says that in their lifetime, but this is crazy. I don't know.
I wonder how much the algorithm is causing a lot of this, right? So I spent a millisecond too long looking at a car ad, and now everything is car ads.
Exactly.
So if you're reading these longer posts about political stuff that just pisses you off, more likely than not, that's begetting you more of that in your stuff, right? And just the way that shit's tied together these days. And it's creepy how much the little things that we focus on, even if we don't like what we're seeing, how much more repetition that creates.
Yeah.
Gotta believe that's part of this.
That's simply just looking at headlines, just the headlines. You're not even reading anything. It's just the headlines are getting ridiculous. Like it's anyways.
There's a tiny, I saw just a tiny video the other day. It was a guy, I don't even remember his name, saying he was basically saying, I have friends at the tops of their industries in several places, political stuff, tech stuff, news, all of this kind of stuff. And he goes, I told him I was going to share what their answer was. but I asked them one simple question: do you make more money when people are angry? And they were like, yeah, it's exponentially yes. Yes, they make more money when people are angry. So just something to think about. Even some of the things that maybe are real 100% could be exaggerated just for the sake of clicks, for the sake of, and I can tell everybody a lovely secret from an internet writer. People on the internet, people who write for most publications, or I should say most writers, the top 1% of writers make a lot of money. Everybody else who's in the mid list of writers who writes for a living, they are writing not because they really care necessarily about what they're saying. They're writing the headlines to get you to click on them. Nothing else really matters. Most writers would prefer to write headlines that were accurate to the story. But I'll tell you a terrible secret, and you're not going to like to hear this about yourself, internet, but you guys don't click on good stuff. You guys click on shit that pisses you off. You click on shit you want to argue with. You click on things that are going to make you mad. And then you get upset that titles are clickbaity. Writers don't want to do that. Writers want to write things they care about. Every writer would much, much rather write things that we like and that we want people to read because we think it's going to be good for them. But you guys don't click on that kind of stuff. And so you know what that means? That means we don't get paid for it. So if you want to change the headlines that you see in general, I'm not even just talking about like, you know, in your local whatevers. I mean, in general, don't click on articles that have clickbait headlines. If you have this behavior enough, more advertising will go behind the articles with the good headlines, and then you will get the good stuff. So that's real. I know it's difficult because it's really interesting to find out why you shouldn't do whatever, or why everybody's wrong for something, or how many people disappointed everybody. But if you don't click it, it would make the writers really, really happy, because we don't want to write those articles. We really, really don't. So just something to keep in mind. And that was not aimed at you, Bassam.
I know, and it's not just about social media, because my comments were also even listening to the radio and local
Yes.
politicians and local laws that are coming in and things that are happening in the community. It's just the way people react. It's the way people, you know, it's not just clickbait. It's the world out there. It's I don't know. It's humanity.
Yeah. This is just a personal issue I've had since I started getting paid as a writer to be writing things that people online would read, and then they would get mad and be like, "Why are they clickbait?" Because that's what you click on, and we get paid for advertising. Please, this is all your fault. We just want to earn a living. Okay, I'm done. Grabbing Lindsay's comment, I don't follow political news, etc., intentionally on my social media. Social media is for art and memes. And then Dennis saying clickbait headlines are almost always disappointing. And there is one thing I do want to say before we kind of hear how Becca's doing, but then also shift focus maybe a little bit, is this. We need to keep in mind, if we are not part of a marginalized group, the ability to disconnect from social media and headlines is a privilege. There are people whose daily rights and existence are threatened by shit that's going on. And if they aren't paying attention all the time, they can't stand up and try to advocate and fight for themselves. So while it's really great for those of us who can disconnect from social media and headlines and things, and I do think it is healthy, I don't think any of us should be letting that stuff rule our lives to the point where it's making us physically ill. There are people who don't have the privilege of being able to not look at those, because the chances that somebody else is about to step up and introduce legislation or pass a bill or do some other bullshit that threatens their livelihood, their existence, all of that stuff, like that's happening regularly. So we have to be willing, if we care to say that we are allies, or we care about these people, or we care about even just the equal treatment of the other humans in our country, we have to be willing to take on a little bit of that burden of discomfort so that we can actively stand up alongside them and not leave them in that fight by themselves, clawing their way forward just to try to be treated like normal humans. So, you know, for them to have the dignity of their existence, we have to be fighting those things alongside them. So as we're having this conversation, I just want to reiterate that and have people keep that in mind. David says, this is why I need to read these stories. You hit it on the head. I need to know how it can, it super sucks. Like, it's very easy to feel upset and then be able to disconnect because you have the privilege of being able to disconnect. Not everybody does. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind as part of like this greater conversation. So we know the stars are aligning to mess us up. We know that sometimes the seasons can mess us up. We know that sometimes frustration with our fellow humans can mess us up. Becca, what's going on with you? And then maybe after we kind of identify some of these things, we can chat about ways that we can deal with these things in a constructive way that brings us, collectively raises our vibrations a little bit.
Well, I'm also part of Team Shit Show. Absolutely.
Hashtag squad goals.
And I have actually considered that, there is a season element. I've lived in Washington for almost 6 years now, which seems crazy to me. But and Washington State gets a bad rap for always being gray and miserable. And it makes everyone depressed because it's always raining here. And it hasn't bothered me until this year. And maybe it's because we didn't get a cool winter. Like, we didn't really get pretty snow or anything. It's just been nonstop gray that I'm finally you know what, Washington, I think I've had enough today. And it took a couple years, but regardless, I've definitely also been in an emotional and mental funk for a variety of reasons, and we don't need to have a full therapy session for that right now. But in trying to address my own issues here, personally, professionally, politically, all on my mind, I've been thinking a lot about mental stimulation. And I think this ties into a lot of what we talked about already between social media and breaking the habits and stuff like that. And just trying to really get a feel about how I personally deal with being over understimulated and how that affects my daily ability to be a functioning human being. And I guess to kind of break that down, if we all know how dopamine works a little bit, kind of, your brain releases this fun little hit of excitement when it thinks you're about to experience something that makes you feel good. And our desire and need to get that dopamine hit it can be trained into our body by how we go about our days. So when we're going through a meme page and we know we're getting that next exciting, happy feeling, scrolling, our desire for that faster and faster and faster hits of dopamine is being trained, versus, not having that. And learning to have a sense of patience to destimulate and to focus on things that are perhaps more important than, the next feel-good meme or anger-inducing headline or the next bag of candy or whatever it is that makes us feel good that isn't actually making us feel that good, because it's taking away from the things in our life that do make us feel good. So that's kind of where my head has been at, and really addressing, what am I doing with my day? When I wake up, am I immediately looking at my phone because my alarm goes off, but then I'm checking Facebook, and then I'm reading Reddit, and then I'm checking my messages, when I could just not do that? I could turn off the alarm and I could read a book, or I could sit and I could write in my journal, or something that's actually going to benefit me in a longer way than the next 5 minutes of enjoyment on the internet. So that's kind of what I've been really deeply personally considering over the last couple of weeks, is how do I reframe my need for stimulation and get away from things that aren't actually helping me get out of a funk.
That's a huge thing I've noticed in my own life as well. Over the past, 6 months or so, I've just stopped doing the things that I was in the habit of doing a lot for that different mental stimulation, playing guitar, making videos, going on hikes with the dog, all of these different things that I had built into my daily routine. As the weather started to decline, as it does in Maine, I just did it less and less. And then it was easier to work a little bit longer. And I haven't picked up the guitar in 2 months, right? And I haven't finished the house that I was working on. That just kind of stopped. All the things, and I find myself searching for those dopamine hits and searching online, doing a lot of it. And they're gonna ban that too. So like I've noticed that I'm always happier, Becca, like you, when not that this is quiet, but that it's stimulated in a lot of different ways. It's like a good relationship, right? You can't just have the hot guy or the hot girl with no brains, right? You can. It's good for about 3 months. And then it's just like maybe a little longer, a little less, it doesn't matter. But you get what I'm saying? It's like you have to have all these different components in a partner to make this really worth it and to really feel what love is. And if we're not doing that for ourselves by constantly stimulating the neurons, creating new pathways, doing things that make you feel good outside of the daily routines, then why are we surprised that we feel like this? Right? So is there something that you found that you are not doing that you'd love to get back to doing?
So many things. So many things. This is like a daily fight. And to be perfectly candid, I have been going through a very fun mental health care experience over the last like 6 months. So I've been like on and off different variations of like medications and stuff. And it's great. Anyway, so I've been like up and down and like experiencing all sorts of weird stuff and like trying to figure out how to get back to what it is that I really want. I've definitely found that putting restrictions in place for myself has been key, and it's hard. And so like my phone, for instance, I have timers set into my phone for the amount of time that I can use like certain apps. Like they'll just straight up turn off for the entire day after they're used for an hour or two. I also have like limitations on what is accessible during different hours of the day. Like during my work hours, I can't access social media from my phone. I can do it on my computer, which I'm naughty and I still do. But at least I'm trying to put the blocks in place, like get away from this mental junk food, so I can focus on the things that I want to do. So I can focus on my work. I can focus actually on my art. I can focus on things like writing or keeping up with like the bureaucratic bullshit of Mondays, which Monday is bureaucratic bullshit day. But anything I can do to create those restrictions. I've also like kind of like you mentioned about like kind of trying to break the habit and institute change. I think now that it's less rainy, I'm going to start like to both get in exercise and like get out of my office. I'm going to start walking to the coffee shop like down the street and be like, this is going to be part of my like Wednesday routine or something. Like I'm going to walk a mile. I'm going to get my exercise. I'm going to sit there and drink a coffee for an hour and a half. And I'm going to do whatever specific task. And I can't do anything else other than that task. And that is going to be a new part of the routine instead of sitting here in my house with my cats and my junk food and my insanity. But anything new and restrictive that can kind of funnel me in that right direction. But I'm still figuring it out, guys. I'm a mess. Like, tell me your restrictions and things that work.
Ooh, this is getting into fun territory. So it's really fantastic, I think, when we can notice about ourselves, like when you start to find those red flags and be like, oh, this is the thing that I've been doing, especially when you don't realize it. And when you were talking about stimulation of, it's the slot machine effect, right? You scroll because you're looking for the next thing that's going to make you happy. And pretty soon you're scrolling past everything really fast because like, nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Like your brain is really desperate for that hit. So it can be like, oh, okay, we're fine again. And if we haven't ever recognized that in ourselves, for the folks who have been with the Artist Forge for a long time, they will remember when we had David with us, and he would say that he's looking at his physical reactions to things as flags for his emotional state. Like maybe he can't always recognize that he's feeling something, but his body will react to something. And then he goes, oh, wait a minute, where did that come from and what's causing that, right? And one of those cycles that I've noticed I go through probably over the past 5 years or so is that I get hyper productive and I get like hyper focused on something and I'm getting stuff done, going. It's looking great. Everybody's like, oh, you do so many things. And then all of a sudden I'll hit a wall and I will do nothing for a long time. And I can't even build the want to make myself do the things. I avoid all of it. And I'm like, I don't do stuff anymore. Like that's my whole personality for a while, is not doing things. And I don't know that that is precisely a healthy cycle to go about things. And I just get reminded, there's a fantastic, couple fantastic ladies that I follow, but one of them basically, and we've talked about this before, said, you don't wait until you're burned out to give yourself a break. You schedule the breaks into your regular life, and they become a part of your routine as much as everything else is a part of your routine. Because if you don't give yourself that now, your body will force you to take it once your body is incapable of doing what you've asked of it. And so I'm definitely feeling now like a proponent in myself as well, but of paying attention to those physical cues where I can say, oh, okay, like what's the first thing I'm doing in the morning? Am I grabbing my phone before I do anything else? Am I not going for walks like I normally did? Am I not whatever? What am I doing with my day? And where can I actually shoehorn in that time that is just for me and not for anything else, so that, right? Because there's I'm going to relate something to the Bible. You're going to have to forgive me. But there's essentially a rule that every 7 years is the fallow rule, right? And then it kind of is in agriculture as well. But essentially you can grow crops in a field for 7 years before the field needs a rest. It needs to be able to rebuild up the nutrients in the soil and grow natural things, and bugs need to come back, and all of the good stuff needs to happen in order for you to continue to grow harvests from that soil. But we don't give that to ourselves. We think that we're just supposed to be machines who continue to go and go and go and go. And we're not built that way. And when we were talking about the effect of seasons on us in the beginning, think about or ask yourself, when was the last time you actually gave yourself a winter in the physical sense?
You gave yourself a what? Sorry, I missed that.
A winter.
A winter.
So if we were to follow the historical nature of what humans did, springtime, we planted, we tilled, the babies were, sheeps were having babies. We had shit we had to do to get ready for the summertime. In the summertime, we were preparing everything for the fall, and we were doing all of the things. And then we harvested, and then we fucking celebrated like the world was going to end. And then we hid in our holes for the winter to try to wait everything out, because there was nothing else to be done. You could still do some stuff, but you were forced, like the earth was, into a time of there's nothing you can do now. You have to chill, because things need to die and things need to be born. And like, this is the cycle that you're in, and you have to do that. Now with street lights and internal lights and the interwebs and everything else, we are in a system of never stopping ever. And there's only so much you can do to yourself before your body forces you to take a winter, or your mind forces you to take a winter. Lindsay's saying, I have a highly efficient friend. She gets things done day in and day out, regardless of how I'm sure the feels. She has them, but is just so disciplined and sticks to the plan. I'm just in awe of her brain. I would be really curious. And I would be interested to see, for folks who have somebody they can ask, how much of that is a normal cycle for them, and how much of it is just that they haven't broken yet. Or do they have healthy rest cycles built into their efficient plans? Like, is that a thing that they do? Because most of the folks I know who are type A personalities and who are constantly going also have chronically high stress levels and chronically high cholesterol levels, and because their body cannot continue to respond to the stress all the time. The only folks I know of who have done it well without having to do things like taking sabbaticals because they're like right on the edge of falling off the edge is that they do have those things built in. Sunday is the day nobody messes with me. That's my rest day. Nobody can step in. That's my time. Like, they are the people who have that as well. So I'd be really curious, Lindsay. I don't know if that's something you know about your friend, or if that's something maybe you can ask and share in the group later. But for those highly efficient folks, I really wonder sometimes if that is also as much of a coping mechanism, you know what I mean, as some of the rest of us, because
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer. I can relate to what you're saying because I consider myself that way, and I considered myself that way when I was in my corporate career. Felt, even though people said I was stressed, I never felt it. I never felt the need to rejuvenate and recuperate, and just never did, right? And yet, after I left, 4 years later, I got cancer. So you don't know. You never know. I don't know if there's a relationship. I've talked about this. I have no idea if there's a relationship, right? But they say stress is one of the biggest factors for cancer, right? So yeah, you're probably right. One day it may hit these people, right? But can you prove that? Can you relate it? Can you prove a connection between it? I don't know.
I don't know either. I wish I did. What I do know is there have been a few times in my life where my body was stressed out and I didn't realize it. And it manifested with physical symptoms that just made me have worse anxiety. So just as an example, I don't know if I've mentioned this here before. We're about to get real personal for a second. I was molested when I was young. And I had, of course, as a young adult woman, I had some experiences with men, like most women do, that are uncomfortable. When Judge Kavanaugh was going through the hearings to be appointed to the Supreme Court, I was trying to stay out of these conversations. But of course, everywhere that you look during that time, Me Too was the thing, and these conversations were being had. And I did not think, I thought I had handled my problems. I thought it didn't affect me. I thought I was fine. I didn't think that I was being stressed out by the situation, but I was having runs of heart palpitations that were so bad, I ended up having to go in and have a stress test done on my heart because I thought something was wrong. And that is from somebody who has had PACs, which are premature atrial contractions, ever since my second pregnancy. So basically the atrial node in my heart will try to fire when it shouldn't. It tries to have an extra heartbeat. It's like, go! And the rest of my heart's like, it's not time. It's not dangerous generally, but it's just a thing that happens, but I can feel it. It feels like your heart is hiccuping or stalling or not beating when it should. And so the result of that with anybody who has anxiety is like, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with my heart. It wasn't until I dealt with this issue out loud, actually speaking to my mom, all of them stopped. I didn't think that I was stressed out. My body was stressed out because my coping mechanism since childhood has been to put everything away and pretend it doesn't affect me. And your body still knows. The body knows. So your body is going to be dealing with stuff even if you don't think you are. And so notice if you have things like foggy head, if you have memory lapses, if you dissociate, if you doom scroll, like there are a lot of things your body will have you do to keep yourself distracted from how you're feeling, to protect itself. And it can only do that for so long before it spills over and you start to see it. My mom says it comes out sideways, but basically just meaning the input doesn't always equal the output. You could be stressed out and all of a sudden you have a rash and you have no idea why. And you're like, I haven't touched anything weird. My soap is the same. Your body is stressed out, even if you're not feeling that immediate stress reaction like you would to a test or a deadline or something like that. So we have to pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, ask my love handles what cortisol does to me, right? So I think Becca put in the comments as well, The Body Keeps a Score, great book, talks about a lot of this, right? It's one of the things that by looking at my journals and going back through my history of when things were great, what was I doing when things were great? Oh, I was with this person, or I was traveling, or I was doing the things that I loved, and everything else was just kind of falling into place. When I'm off that track and I eat all the things that I'm not supposed to eat because of health, and I look at it and I say, well, I'm foggy and I'm depressed, not really surrounding myself with quality people, then how can I possibly stay in a place of service and attract good things to me? Right. So when I was out at the Sue Bryce self-value workshop a couple months back, one of the things that she really stresses is the daily ritual. What is your non-negotiable, Bassam? What is your non-negotiable daily ritual? And it is things like not touching your phone, putting it in another room until 9 a.m. so you can get up and meditate or walk with the dog or have your cup of coffee or whatever it is that you can build in to get yourself into that mental space every single morning, creating those habits. And it doesn't have to be some long, drawn out 4 or 5 hour process. It can be 20 minutes, but give yourself the honor of doing that for yourself and putting that first. I would not be surprised if you see a little bit of difference. I'm not saying it to anyone specifically here, but you in general. I know for me, when I do that, it makes me feel insanely better. And when I listen to, like Dennis is saying, when I listen to my body and say, wow, this doesn't feel good, or I'm constipated, or I've got headaches, or like whatever it is, I have to go back and look at, well, what are you doing to yourself? Are you stressing yourself out? Have you gotten up from that chair in the past 7 hours? If you haven't, it might be time to move. I know. You feeling personally attacked, Becca? Yeah, me too. So I think there's a lot of little things that we can do. But I know for me, I get stressed out thinking about what's my daily ritual going to be. And I need to do it the best I can possibly do it. And then I'm right back to square fucking one all over again. So, but I think the important part of my rambling is create that daily ritual that is sacred to you, absolutely sacred, and see if that doesn't start to turn things just a little bit, right? Change the mindset just a hair, especially in the morning. I don't know.
Yeah,
what do you guys
and
think?
make it a ritual you love. Like, make it really enjoyable, like something that feels and smells and tastes really good. Like, as much of the just completely hedonistic, sensual pleasure of the thing as much as you can. Like, make stuff pretty. Everybody has heard me talk about my honey jar that's downstairs before. It's my favorite thing to use. Like, it sounds dumb, but it's not. That's why your ritual places, like, culturally are beautiful. You want to go there. You want to feel the thing. You want to touch the stuff that feels good and smell the incense. You want to feel and hear the bird song, like all of those things. So when you're putting your ritual together, give yourself the most pleasurable ritual you can. Like, maybe that's you do your facial or something in the morning and you spoil, like, whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Does it matter? Like, as long as it's something that makes you feel like you're loving on yourself and you're centered and all of that stuff, like, do that. Stacy saying, just talked with my therapist about setting a morning ritual. Then I turn this on and get the same message. It's a sign. Fate showing up. And so it's kind of same story. The last meeting that I had with my therapist, I think I mentioned that here. He essentially said, find a time to ground yourself and practice that so that when your head does start shooting off into dangerous territory, you can use everything you've learned about bringing yourself back down through that physical, that ritual, that especially, that's why I mentioned the sensual nature of it, something you can smell, touch, taste, hear, all of that kind of stuff. When you can use those things to draw your mind back down into your body instead of floating off into analyzation land, it makes a big difference. And you're training yourself on how to bring your brain back.
Let me ask you guys this question. What would your perfect morning daily ritual look like? Float it out there. What would it look like?
Sitting on the back porch with my cup of tea in the sunshine when the birds are singing and all my plants are in bloom.
At what time and for how long?
At about 7:30 in the morning for about an hour or so with my husband.
Is it possible for you to create that?
During the spring, summer, and fall. Yep.
Okay.
And it's terrible. It's terrible for me that sometimes during the height of COVID was some of the best times of peace in my life, because we would get up in the morning, we would get our tea and coffee, we would go sit on the back porch. We had a garden that was blooming. The birds were going like.
How about you, Becca and Bassam?
I mean, I have mine written down on my little daily schedule every day, and then I haven't accomplished it in a while. I think my favorite morning ritual that I know, and I've done it consistently for months, just not recently, is I want to wake up at like 5 a.m. I lift weights, I cool down, I go and I drink my coffee, and I read and or write together for about half hour, 45 minutes. And then I get my kids up for school, and then I go about my day.
Okay. Bassam, and then I'm gonna tie something together after that. Bassam, how about you?
So my favorite morning ritual is something I'd like to do, which I've never been able to do, right? And it comes back to exercise, which is what Becca just mentioned. I'd like to wake up in the morning and immediately be able to go and work out, right? First thing, so it's out of the way, work out, get it done, be disciplined about it, come back, take a shower, sit down and have a coffee, enjoy whatever, I don't even call it social media, whatever I need to spend 20 minutes to half an hour just doing, right? So I can say, okay, that's behind me. Now I can get on with my day. It's as simple as that, but the biggest portion of it is my biggest struggle, which is actually getting some workouts now.
The thing that I noticed about all three of you, and I am exactly the same, so this ain't me pointing fingers, is that no one said, I want to just read a book. It was, I want to read a book, I want to sit with coffee, I want to sit on my back deck, I want to exercise, I want to go here, I want to do this, right? All we're doing is taking all of our work shit and pouring that over into the pleasure side. Is there a way that you cannot be overwhelmed by the daily ritual by ripping all that stuff down to one thing and starting with that one thing? Getting up and just exercising. Forget about the coffee, forget about sitting. Is there a way that you can boil it down and then add on to it as you build the muscles?
I see where you're going with that, Matt. So essentially saying that sometimes the idea of getting that morning ritual started is overwhelming because of how much we've added to it. If we can simplify it just to, right. And luckily for me, I had this so that the morning ritual itself is not overwhelming. I'm literally waiting for warmer weather to be able to do it. But outside of that, like 100%, I'm going to use this is not a dumb example. I have kids. My littlest guy, we are going to have him tested for ADHD, and there's a chance, given the kind of personality he has, I would not be surprised also to hear that he may have autism spectrum disorder, like he may be on there, especially given some of the issues he's been having that I didn't know about with sensory stuff. But when I need him to clean his room, if I say, hey, buddy, I need you to go pick up your bedroom, even if it's not really messy in there, he will get overwhelmed with the project. And he's like, I can't, I'm going to take forever. It's so messy. And then he cries and he hides, right? If I say, hey, buddy, can you go in your room and put away 25 things? Sure. He goes. He doesn't complain. He just goes and gets it done. Because I've given him something small enough that it feels measurable and it's not overwhelming, right? And when I have him do, he has not complained to me a single time. Even if later on in the day, I'm like, okay, buddy, can you go do 15 more things? Cool. He goes and does it real quick because he can measure those and he can accomplish that. Doesn't feel overwhelming. So I'm with you. If you have an idea for a ritual, hell yeah, simplify that thing. Make it as easy to accomplish as possible.
We're so focused on achieving so much that we forget to simplify and specify what would make us happy, right? Sitting with your tea for how long? An hour might be perfect. Can you start with 10 minutes?
Right.
Right. And that way just build those muscles in. So I'm very much the same way. I'd love to get up and exercise and then shower and then write and then do all these things. And I get overwhelmed with it. So I'm saying this as much for myself as I am to be preachy. It's, I know my health has declined significantly, gaining weight, just not feeling good. I need to exercise in the morning. If I want to honor myself and make the rest of my life better, that is a non-negotiable that I have to do. So, how do I start doing that? Well, it ain't going in and doing CrossFit 6 days a week. It's going for a walk with the dog in the morning, right?
Right.
Maybe it's the length of the driveway. Maybe it's 2 miles. But all I'm saying is I know I need to build up to that perfect ritual. And yeah, at some point, maybe it'll be these 7 things where I feel good and I feel in balance. But there's no harm in just picking that one favorite thing and starting towards that, right? And maybe it won't be so overwhelming to add one more thing in or extend that tea for a little bit longer, right? So yeah, it's common. I'm not saying I have any answers, but that's the way that I'm approaching it anyway. I've got to break it down into something little. I'll put away my 25 things.
Yeah. Tell me if this was this in Atomic Habits, the 5-minute rule? Like, even if you just go to the gym for 5 minutes, that's fine. I might have heard that somewhere else. I was essentially listening to somebody talk about helping people.
Yeah, I think it was even if you just put your shoes on to go there, not even go there, just put your shoes on.
Yes, even if you're just putting your shoes on regularly. Yeah. And they said you don't even, like, if you're going to go to the gym, tell you 5 minutes. Anybody can go for 5 minutes. Like, you can leave after 5 minutes, because you're right. We get the idea of doing these things and then the pressure to do them all the time and to do them perfectly. And all of a sudden we start going, well, it takes me 10 minutes to get up and get ready, and then 30 minutes to drive there. And then I got to be there for 45 minutes. And I got to turn around and drive 35 minutes back. And like, all of a sudden in our heads, it's like this task is getting larger and larger and larger. But if we can just give ourselves that 5-minute mark, or that just put on my shoes, or whatever. Another thing I've noticed, I know I've said this before, in the morning, if I right now I'm in like jammy clothes, right? But if I wake up and before I leave my bedroom, if I put on workout shit, I will just be healthier for the rest of the day. Even if I don't go to the gym or I don't go for a walk, I will eat healthier. I will be more active, because doing that is a mindset shift. When you put on those clothes, that's when you work out. So like, even those little tricks are really incredibly powerful from a mental perspective. Yes, try with your babies. I did not know that this was going to work so good with my little guy, but we're now using this in his classroom setting as well. Per the last meeting I had with his teachers, we tried to give him a goal. We were like, buddy, what would be the coolest thing that you could do? And we'll work toward that. And he's like, we would go to the arcade and we'd play there all day and we'd have food and stuff. And we're like, okay, so we'd made a vision board and we'd like drew pictures and colored it. And that was the thing. Didn't work. You know why? Because that was at some point in the future, and school is now. And there's the possibility that he would fail and then he wouldn't get that thing. And that wasn't motivating for him. So we broke it down even smaller and said, okay, well, what if we just do, if you're having a good, like the first part of the day, then the teacher will put down a smiley face. And if the next part of the day is good, and if you have more smiley faces than sad faces at the end of the week, we're going to try that. So the little smiley face is like a small reward for a short amount of time. And then a week is not that long. And if we have to shorten it, we will. But giving those measurable things for him so that he can say, I did it already. Like, that makes it feel like it's so much more of a more accomplishable task. Dennis saying a few years ago, I started going to bed at a set time and taking 15 to 30 minutes to read a book as I wind down. That got me back into reading books I really enjoy. And now I look forward to bedtime. My life improved a lot when I started the habit, which is fantastic. Twyla Tharp wrote about this. She was a choreographer. She was asked how she got herself to the gym every morning. She said her job every morning was to get dressed and get into the taxi. And once she was in the taxi, she figured I might as well work out, which is a fantastic way to look at that. When I ran, I would put on the clothes to sleep and wake up and just be ready to go. That's smart. On days I don't really feel like going for a run, I figure my job is to put on my running shoes and step out the front door. Once I'm out there, right? Whatever may happen at that point. There's one thing I did want to bring up, though, as we're moving toward the close of the show, and this is a Sue Bryce thing that I heard her mention years and years ago, but that did stick with me. she has talked openly about her struggles with her weight before. And essentially what I remember her saying is, I didn't lose weight and then love myself. I loved myself and then I lost weight. And I think we can look at that and apply that to a lot of our lives. If we treat ourselves like we love ourselves and not like our body is some machine that we put a coin into and get a reward out of, right? Then all of the sudden, everything flows from that. So what would you do for yourself if you loved yourself? How would you treat you? What rewards would you give yourself? What would you do for you if you loved yourself and not as if you saw your body as a production machine? What would you do? I have Sorry, Bassam, what?
Allow myself not to feel guilty about everything.
Ooh.
That's it. My number one Achilles heel.
Ouch.
I love that. I love that. That is a gift we should be giving ourselves. I have a time block app that helps me to accurately schedule my day and not fill with everything, but also see that I was productive. It's easy to forget what you did get done. That's very true. I have a million schedules and apps and I don't use them. I try to, and then I'm like, shit, I got to build that into my schedule too. Like I got to make that a habit to use that thing and that other thing. And then the same thing happens. I'm like, oh no. Can't. So that's actually the question for today. So if you're hanging out in the audience, this is what I want to know. If you loved yourself, what would you allow yourself to do? Or what would you give to yourself if you loved yourself? And Bassam said he would allow himself to not feel guilty for everything. Matt, Becca, if you loved yourself, what would you give to you?
That's going to cause me to go blind. Let me think about that for a minute.
I heard a quote that really inspired me recently. Even being pretty is agnostic. When who you are is God's gift to you. Who you become is your gift to God.
Yeah, I think for me, body acceptance and self-love physically would change a lot for me. If that could be released through whatever means, and not have that be such a deep-seated part of me, if I could release that, I know that all those tributaries that it affects in the rest of my life would dry up and it'd be wonderful. So I think that's the biggest gift that I could give for myself. Actively working on it. Not there yet. Trying.
So not to feel guilty all the time. Body, love, peace, Bobby says. Becca, what about you?
That's a hard question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely thinking about what a toxic girlfriend I am to myself.
For real? I think I would stop judging everything I do. Mm-hmm. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Was it the right thing? Was it the right thing at the wrong time? Is it too late? Is it not too late? You didn't do it. My doctor called me out on that. I'd never had anybody call me out on that before, but I said I was bad and I didn't do the thing we talked about last time. And she said, why did you just make a judgment on that? That wasn't a right or a wrong. It was just a thing. Saying I didn't do it doesn't equal I'm bad. But in my head, everything I see that I didn't do that I should have done is a mark against me, right? Like I didn't clean the kitchen yet. I didn't make my bed. I haven't worked out. I should have, I wasn't, whatever. Everything. And then when I do a good job, I did good, give myself a small gold star. When it's not a judgment, it never should have been a judgment in the first place. It's not, there is nobody giving me gold stars, right? Like you just either did or you didn't. And there is no good or bad attached to that. But for some reason, I have good and bad attached to all of that. I don't think it's helpful.
Can I say tough love? Is that an option? I feel like that feels kind of antithesis to the more positive options so far. But no, but seriously, so kind of thinking back again to that evilness that is dopamine that feels so nice. And seriously, okay, so how prone I personally am to addictive tendencies and my own personal addiction, if you will, to desiring that next hit of dopamine and falling into really bad negative habits. And thinking of how I have treated people who I love when they're struggling with problems and doing the wrong things in their lives, not in a cruel way, but being able to be firm and understanding and still wanting to see the better behavior. I don't do that for myself, not to the degree that I would like to, if that makes sense.
So are you saying you feel like you're like permissive with yourself, or that you are enabling yourself, or?
Yes, absolutely. Matt's got an odd look on his face.
Oh no.
Friends in the comments, I know some of you were hiding out. I know it's a hard question, but I think maybe it's important today. What would you give to yourself if you loved yourself? And I'm phrasing it that way on purpose because oftentimes we don't treat ourselves like we love ourselves. We treat ourselves like a prize racehorse, right? We put food in our body and then we expect shit to get done. Run, you bastard, right? Like, how come you didn't win? You're not working hard enough. Why did that other horse beat you? How come you're not in the top 3? We worked really hard on this last week, right? Instead of, hey, we're just going to go run because we love to run. And wherever we end up, I'm happy I got to run with you. Like, that's a whole different thing. And when you run because you love it, the results are different. Right? You do the thing for the joy of it, and everything that comes after that is just a blessing. Instead of, I didn't run hard enough. Self-acceptance is a big one. 100%. I've been working on that one my whole damn life. We love you too. It's violent affection. So, if you're not comfortable answering this question today, I totally understand, but I would really, really love for you to think on that one for yourself. Because when you love yourself and you give yourself permission to love you now, not when you're better, not when you're less stressed, not when you finally did the thing, not when you've lost the weight, not when you forgave somebody, not when whatever stipulations you have put on, I will love myself when. No, we don't love somebody because of what they can do. That's transactional. We love somebody because they're a person and they deserve dignity and love for who they are. You love first. Everything else that's good comes from that. So if we can love ourselves now, we'll live up to it. That's how that works. A lot of my issues stem from others judging me and holding on to the belief that their opinions actually matter, which is so important. And your thoughts don't come from nowhere. So oftentimes when we have those self-deprecating thoughts, they are a repetition of things that we have heard and learned to internalize, right? So we have to recognize that as well. So when we have those thoughts about ourselves, we can ask ourselves, would I say this to me if I loved myself? No, you know you wouldn't. All right. I know we're a little bit over time today, but I just want to hear any final thoughts. It was such a good conversation. It felt like it was worth continuing. So it is final thoughts time. If you are in the audience and you have any final thoughts, insights that you had, or things you just feel like you would like to leave people with, put that in the comments. We'll pull them up. Matt, Bassam, Becca, do you guys have any final thoughts today?
I feel guilty for not contributing enough today.
Get over it. I think my big thing, one, I echo David. I love the fact that we can be here and be vulnerable and say that we're going through all this shit, but still be actively working to solve the problem and figure it out and get a deeper understanding. I think we can all do that in our own way, right? But just sitting there saying, man, I'm pissed off and I don't know why and I don't know what to do about it. Take a couple of minutes, step back, think about it, reframe and look at what would be perfect for me right now. And can I just take a couple of steps towards it? Doesn't have to be the whole distance, but take a couple of steps towards it. I think that is the biggest takeaway for me, is that I just need to hear that reinforcement that other people are going through this. It's not just me. We all kind of have the same struggles. We come at it from different directions, but the solutions we're all pretty well aware of. And it takes a little bit of support from friends to kind of push you forward. And that's what I got from this. And I love you all for it. Thank you.
Becca's trying not to speak. Look at her face.
There's too many thoughts for words. They're going faster than the words.
Just speak them as they come out.
This is it. There's my thought.
All right. My final thought is I'm going to tell you a story and then make an application real quick and we'll be done. My kiddos, ever since they were tiny, almost all littles are like this. When they get overwhelmed or in their feelings or they're upset, they don't have the words to communicate their emotions, right? They just feel big things and they can't look at you and say, I'm irritated because these things happened. So they don't want to do anything. They don't want to eat now. They don't want to put on their pants. They don't want you to put on their shoes. They don't want to get buckled into the car seat. They want nothing. They are mad now about the world. And the answer to that is not, I'm going to give you something to cry about, right? The answer to that is not, I'm going to force you to do the thing. The answer to that is, come sit in my lap and cry it out. And I will hold you and rub your back until all of it is out of you. And then once you've had a chance to feel all of your big feelings and you know that I'm here holding you and that I'm gonna be here when you're sad and I'm not mad at you because you're sad or you're mad. And afterwards, now you're safe and you're okay. Then we can do the stuff because all the big feelings are gone and you're not trapped anymore. That is the person you need to be for yourself. You're sad and you're stuck in a funk. You don't need to just ball beat yourself into going out and doing the thing anyway. You need to cuddle yourself a little bit and give yourself a hug and tell yourself it's okay to feel your feelings and feel them and be okay and know that you're safe with you, that you don't need to be afraid to be alone with yourself because you're going to start beating the shit out of yourself. Love yourself enough to comfort you when you're having those struggles. And then once you've had a chance to feel your feelings, you're going to be okay. Know that you're safe with you, and then you can go out and do the stuff that needs to be done because you're safe, not because if you don't do it, you're going to get hurt, right?
So topical quote from a book I'm reading that I wrote down in my notebook. It says, don't judge your feelings, notice them, use them as your map. Don't be afraid of the truth.
And with that is it for today, everybody. I know we went a little bit over, but it just felt like it was going to such a good place that we had to let it play out. Remember, it's the 13th, right? Dennis is going to be teaching for us on the 13th. Double checking. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Right.
Thursday, the 13th of April. I'm pretty sure that's right. So we are getting yes, okay, Dennis says that that's correct. So we are getting the rest of the promo material together to give ourselves about 2 weeks of time to promote our class. But Dennis is going to be coming in and teaching for the Artist Forge. He is going to be teaching color grading, and we'll have a list of you of some of the topics that are going to be covered. But if you don't know, Dennis is the OG in the retouching industry, right? This dude has retouched movie posters for some of your favorite movies. You have seen his work, even if you maybe don't realize it. He is one of the most humble people when it comes to his own work. He is not one to talk himself up. So I will do it for him and say, if you want to learn from somebody in the retouching industry, this is the guy, and he is going to be teaching us not next 2 Thursdays from now. Anyway, 3 Thursdays, I don't know. The 13th of April is a Thursday. We are going to be together at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's 6 p.m. for the West Coast and 9 p.m. for the East Coast. Dennis is teaching us a 2-hour class. So for the first hour, we're going to go through his class, and then for that last hour you're going to be able to actually ask questions, and he's going to show us some really cool stuff. You do have to be a member of the Facebook group in order to be part of that, so we want you to join so we can then follow up with you, see what you thought and everything. But we'll be promoting that soon. I will let everybody know once the class goes up for sale on our website. You will be able to buy your way into the webinar there. So I hope you will join us, because that is going to be a worthwhile class. And right now I'm in the middle of bugging Kelly Robitaille to come in and teach as well. So I'm going to continue poking her, because she's another awesome teacher that we're going to be able to snag and have her come into the group. So please be paying attention to that. Until next Monday, where we will get together yet again for another meeting of the Artist Forge at the same bat time, the same bat place, 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's noon for the West Coast, and 3 p.m. for the East Coast. Come and hang out with us then. Until then, have an amazing week. Go make stuff. Give yourself some grace and love on you, and we will see everybody then. Bye, friends.
Bye, everyone.